In the high-stakes world of New York divorce law, the rule is simple. Fight for every penny. You scream, you litigate, you burn the earth to get your half. But on a rainy Tuesday in November, Clara Thorne did the unthinkable. She sat across from her husband, a man worth $300 million, and she didn't say a word. She didn't ask for the penthouse. She didn't ask for the alimony. She signed the papers with a terrifying calmness that should have scared him to death. Her husband Marcus thought he had won the lottery. He thought she was weak. He was wrong. She wasn't surrendering. She was waiting. Because Clara knew something Marcus didn't. She knew who was waiting for her outside. The conference room on the 44th floor of the Sterling & Cooper building was cold. It was designed that way. It was a room built for intimidation with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park, reminding everyone inside just how small they were compared to the city. Marcus Thorne sat at the head of the mahogany table, checking his Rolex Daytona for the third time in 5 minutes. He adjusted his bespoke navy suit, the fabric costing more than most people's cars. He looked at his lawyer, a shark of a man named Daniel Prescott, and smirked. "She's late," Marcus muttered, drumming his fingers on the glass table. "Probably crying in the lobby. God, I hope she doesn't make a scene." Prescott didn't smile. He was too expensive to smile. "Let's just get the signature, Marcus. Don't provoke her. The prenup is ironclad, but if she decides to contest the emotional distress clause, we could be here for another 6 months." "She won't," Marcus said, his voice dripping with arrogance. "Clara doesn't fight. She endures. That's why I married her, and that's why I'm leaving her." The heavy oak doors creaked open. The room fell silent. Clara Thorne walked in. She wasn't crying. She wasn't disheveled. She was wearing a cream-colored cashmere coat that looked soft enough to melt, cinched tightly at the waist. Her hair was pulled back in a severe, elegant bun. She carried no bag, no files, no frantic stacks of paper, just a single silver pen. She didn't look at Marcus. She didn't look at the view. She sat in the chair opposite him, her posture perfect. "Sorry I'm late," she said. Her voice was monotone, devoid of any vibration of sadness. "Traffic on 5th was a nightmare." Marcus leaned forward, the predator scenting blood. "Clara, I assume you've read the final draft. Daniel sent it over to your... Do you even have a lawyer representing you today?" Clara looked up, her eyes a piercing clear blue. "I read it, Marcus. I don't need a lawyer to understand that you're leaving me with the Hamptons rental and the Audi while you keep the portfolio, the townhouse, and the shares in Thorne Logistics." "It's fair, Clara," Marcus lied smoothly. "You never worked for the company. You hosted dinners. You arranged flowers. The settlement reflects your contribution." It was an insult designed to break her. Everyone in that room, including the stenographer, knew that Clara had been the one to charm the investors at the chaotic 2019 merger. Clara was the one who smoothed over Marcus's drunken rants at the charity galas. Prescott, the lawyer, slid the document across the table. "Sign here, Mrs. Thorne, and here. This waives your right to future spousal support. This clause here, this is the non-disclosure agreement. You cannot discuss Marcus's business dealings or the nature of the separation." The nature of the separation was a polite legal term for Sienna, the 24-year-old marketing intern Marcus had been sleeping with for 8 months. Marcus watched her, holding his breath. This was the moment. This was where the screaming started. This was where she would demand half. Clara picked up the document. She didn't flip through the pages. She didn't hesitate. She uncapped her silver pen. Scritch, scratch. She signed the waiver. She signed the NDA. She signed the divorce decree. The silence in the room was deafening. It was heavier than a scream. Prescott, the lawyer, frowned. He had been doing high-net-worth divorces for 30 years. He had never seen a woman sign away a fortune without blinking. It unnerved him. It felt like walking into a trap, but he couldn't see the snare. "Clara," Marcus asked, his brow furrowed. "That's it, you're okay with this?" Clara capped her pen. She stood up, smoothing the front of her coat. "I'm not okay with it, Marcus," she said softly. "But I am done with it." She turned to leave. "Wait." Marcus stood up, a sudden inexplicable panic rising in his chest. He had won. He had everything he wanted. Why did he feel like he was the one losing? Where are you going? You need a ride? I can have the driver drop you. No, thank you. Clara set her hand on the brass door handle. She looked back at him one last time. It wasn't a look of anger. It was a look of pity. My ride is already here. Who? Marcus scoffed. Your mother. No, Clara said. Silas. The door clicked shut. Marcus froze. He looked at Prescott. Silas. Who the hell is Silas? Prescott was already at the window looking down at the street 44 stories below. His face went pale. Marcus, the lawyer whispered. Come look at this. Down on the rain-slicked street, a car was idling at the curb. It wasn't a taxi. It wasn't an Uber. It was a Rolls-Royce Phantom jet black with diplomatic flags on the fender. A man in a suit was holding an umbrella for Clara as she slid into the back seat. It's just a rental. Marcus laughed nervously. She's trying to save face. That's not a rental, Prescott said, his voice trembling. I know that car. That creates a problem, Marcus. That creates a very big problem. Why, whose car is it? That belongs to the Kincaid estate. Prescott turned to his client. Silas Kincaid, the venture capitalist, the one who just bought the majority stake in the bank that holds all your company's debt. Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. Silas Kincaid is a recluse. No one has seen him in 5 years. Why is he picking up my ex-wife? To understand the terror that was slowly creeping up Marcus Thorne's spine, you have to understand the man named Silas Kincaid. In the financial world, Kincaid wasn't a man. He was a force of nature. He was old money, mixed with new tech. He didn't just buy companies. He dismantled them, stripped them for parts, or turned them into empires. He was a ghost. He never gave interviews. He never appeared at galas. And Marcus Thorne, a man who considered himself a shark, was merely a guppy in Silas Kincaid's ocean. 3 days after the divorce papers were signed, Marcus was trying to celebrate. He was at La Cuckoo with Sienna. Sienna was beautiful, loud, and draped in the diamonds Clara had left behind in the safe. Babe, stop looking at your phone, Sienna whined, twirling a forkful of lobster. We're celebrating, you're free. We're rich. Marcus swiped away a notification from his CFO. I know. It's just, something is weird. What's weird? Clara. Marcus took a heavy sip of his scotch. She moved out of the townhouse in 3 hours. The movers said she only took her clothes and a box of old books. She left the jewelry. She left the art. Who leaves a Picasso sketch on the wall? Sienna. Someone who's stupid. Sienna giggled. No. Marcus darkened. Clara isn't stupid. She's calculated. I checked her bank accounts before I cut her access. She had $5,000 to her name. Where is she living? How is she eating? Maybe she's shacking up with that Silas guy you said he picked her up. That's impossible, Marcus snapped. Clara doesn't know Silas Kincaid. She was a kindergarten teacher before I met her. She doesn't run in those circles. It had to be a coincidence. Maybe she knows the driver. Just then Marcus's phone buzzed. It was a priority email from the board of directors of Thorne Logistics. Subject: Emergency Board Meeting. Tomorrow, 8:00 a.m. Marcus frowned. What the hell? He opened the email. There was no text, just an attachment. A PDF document labeled Audit Discrepancies 2023.pdf. Marcus felt a cold sweat break out. He had been creative with the company accounting for years. Nothing illegal, he told himself, just gray areas. Moving debt to shell companies, inflating asset values to secure loans. It was how the game was played. But he was the CEO. The board usually ate out of his hand. Who ordered an audit? He scrolled down to the bottom of the email to see who had initiated the meeting. Requested by the Kincaid Holding Group, major shareholder. Marcus dropped his phone. It clattered onto the fine china, cracking the screen. The flashback. 6 months prior. While Marcus was busy sneaking Sienna into hotels in Soho, Clara had been at home. But she hadn't been crying. Clara had a secret one she kept even from Marcus. Before she was a socialite wife, and before she was a kindergarten teacher, Clara had a different life. She had a degree in forensic accounting from Wharton. She had given it up because Marcus wanted a traditional wife. He wanted a homemaker, not a partner, so she played the part. She dumbed herself down. But when she found the second phone in Marcus's briefcase, the one with the texts to Sienna, the forensic accountant woke up. Every night while Marcus slept, Clara accessed his laptop. She didn't look for love letters. She looked for ledgers. She tracked every dollar he siphoned off. She found the offshore accounts in the Caymans. She found the shell company, Bluebird LLC, which he used to buy gifts for his mistress using company funds. She printed everything. But she didn't take it to a divorce lawyer. A divorce lawyer would get her a settlement, a few $1,000,000. Marcus would pay it and move on. He would still be powerful. He would still be arrogant. Clara didn't want money. She wanted justice. So she packaged the files, the tax evasion, the embezzlement, the fraud, and she sent them to the one man she knew hated Marcus Thorne more than anyone, Silas Kincaid. Years ago, Marcus had screwed Silas over on a real estate deal in Brooklyn. It was petty, small-time stuff, but Silas never forgot a slight. Clara had written a simple note attached to the files, Mr. Kincaid. My husband believes he is untouchable. Here is the proof that he is not. I am divorcing him. I am taking nothing. I am leaving him entirely to you. Do what you do best. Clara. She had mailed the package 4 weeks ago. She hadn't heard a word back. She thought perhaps Silas Kincaid didn't care. But then the Rolls-Royce appeared, back in the present, the boardroom. The next morning, Marcus walked into the Thorne Logistics boardroom. He looked like he hadn't slept. His tie was crooked. The board members were whispering. When Marcus entered, they stopped. Gentlemen, Marcus said, forcing a smile, what is this about our quarterly numbers are up? Sit down, Marcus, said heavy-set man at the end of the table. It was Arthur Pending, the chairman. We have a new representative from our majority investor. The Kincaid Group has exercised their option to convert their debt into equity. They own 51% of the company as of this morning. That's a hostile takeover, Marcus shouted. You can't do that. It's already done, a voice came from the corner of the room. The leather chair at the far end swiveled around. Marcus expected to see Silas Kincaid. He was ready to beg. He was ready to bargain. But the chair turned, and it wasn't a man in a suit. It was Clara. She was wearing a sharp charcoal blazer. She looked like a CEO. She looked like a queen. Hello, Marcus, she said, her voice cool and steady. Clara, Marcus wheezed, grabbing the back of a chair for support. What are you doing here? You signed the NDA. You can't be here. I signed an NDA stating I wouldn't discuss our marriage, Clara said, opening a file folder in front of her. I am not here to discuss our marriage. I am here as the newly appointed proxy for Mr. Silas Kincaid to discuss the financial irregularities of the CEO of Thorne Logistics. She tossed a stack of papers onto the table. It was the file. The Bluebird LLC expenses. The diamonds for Sienna. The offshore transfers. You see, Marcus? Clara stood up, walking slowly toward him. You thought silence was weakness. But while you were making noise, I was taking notes. Mr. Kincaid was very impressed with my forensic work. In fact, he hired me. You work for him. I run his acquisitions department now. Clara smiled, a dangerous, shark-like smile that Marcus had never seen before. And my first acquisition is you. Marcus Thorne was not a man who accepted defeat. He was a man who redefined the rules until he won. Being escorted out of his own building, the building that bore his last name in 10-foot steel letters above the entrance, was a hallucination. It couldn't be real. He stood on the sidewalk of 57th Street, the rain soaking his bespoke suit. Security had handed him a cardboard box containing his personal effects, a photo of him shaking hands with the mayor, a stress ball, and a half-empty bottle of cologne. Sienna was waiting in the Audi R8 around the corner. When he got in, dripping wet and shaking with a rage that felt like magma in his veins, she didn't ask if he was okay. "Did you get the black card back?" she asked, applying lip gloss in the visor mirror. "Because the transaction at Bergdorf's was declined, Marcus. It was embarrassing." Marcus slammed his fist against the dashboard, cracking the plastic vent. "They suspended me, Sienna Clara. That witch. She orchestrated a hostile takeover from the inside. She's frozen my accounts pending an internal investigation." Sienna blinked, her mouth slightly open. "So, we're poor." "I'm not poor," Marcus roared. "I have assets. I have leverage. Drive to Daniel's office. Now." Daniel Prescott's office smelled of old money and stale cigars. The lawyer was pacing the length of his Persian rug, a glass of scotch in his hand. He looked less like a shark today and more like a cornered rat. "We have a problem, Marcus," Prescott said, bypassing the pleasantries. "I've been digging into Kincaid's filing. It's flawless. Clara didn't just hand him a smoking gun. She handed him the bullets, the fingerprint dusting kit, and the confession. The forensic audit is watertight. You used company funds to pay for the apartment in Soho for Sienna. That's embezzlement." "It was a business expense," Marcus argued, pacing the room. "Client entertainment. Sienna is a 24-year-old yoga instructor, Marcus. Unless she was teaching downward dog to the SEC regulators, no judge is going to buy that." Marcus collapsed onto the leather sofa. "So what do we do? I can't lose my company to her. I can't lose to Clara. She's a nobody. She's a housewife." Prescott sat down behind his desk, his eyes narrowing. "If we can't beat them on the financials, we have to beat them in the court of public opinion. We have to make Clara look like the villain. If we can prove she colluded with a corporate raider to destroy her husband's company for personal gain, we might be able to void the NDA and sue her for damages, or at least force Kincaid to settle to avoid the bad press." "How do we do that?" "We paint a narrative," Prescott said, leaning forward. "The grieving husband, the predatory wife. She didn't leave you because you cheated Marcus. No, that's not the story anymore. She left you because she was having an affair with Silas Kincaid." Marcus's eyes widened. "But she wasn't. They never met." "Does it matter?" Prescott smiled, a cruel, thin smile. "Kincaid is a recluse. He's mysterious. People fear him. If we leak a story that Clara was feeding him inside information for months, sleeping with the enemy to secure a payout, she becomes the adulterer. She becomes the corporate spy. We destroy her reputation. And the audit, it becomes a fabrication." Prescott waved his hand. "A setup by a vindictive ex-wife and her billionaire lover to steal your company." It was dirty. It was dangerous. It was a lie that could ruin lives. Marcus looked at his reflection in the darkened window. He thought of Clara's calm face in the boardroom. He thought of the pity in her eyes. "Do it," Marcus hissed. "Burn her to the ground." By the next morning, the machinery of destruction was in motion. Prescott hired a fixer, a man named Gorman, who specialized in media manipulation. They planted blind items in Page 6. They leaked doctored timelines to gossip blogs. The headline on the New York Post the following Tuesday screamed, "Billionaire backstab. Did Thorne Logistics heiress plot coup from the bedroom of a rival?" The article was vicious. It painted Clara as a master manipulator, a gone girl figure who had faked a happy marriage while secretly funneling data to Silas Kincaid. It described Marcus as a blind-sided visionary who was the victim of a corporate honey trap. Paparazzi swarmed Clara's old apartment. They camped outside the Thorne Logistics building. They harassed her elderly mother in Connecticut. Marcus watched the news from his hotel suite. He was currently barred from the townhouse. He swirled his drink, feeling a grim sense of satisfaction. The narrative was shifting. Thorne Logistics stock was wobbling. The board was getting nervous about the scandal. You see, Marcus told Sienna, who was scrolling through Instagram comments, "She's not invincible. She's just a woman." But Marcus had made a critical error. He assumed Clara cared about public opinion. He assumed she was playing a game of fame. He didn't realize that by attacking Clara, he hadn't just angered an ex-wife. He had engaged the full lethal attention of Silas Kincaid. At 11:00 p.m. that night, Marcus's phone rang. It was a blocked number. "Hello?" Marcus answered. "Mr. Thorne." The voice was deep, synthesized, and cold. "This is a courtesy call." "Who is this?" "You have thrown a stone at a fortress," the voice said. "You should have checked if the fortress was armed. Check your email." The line went dead. Marcus checked his email. There was a new message from an anonymous sender. Subject Sienna. He opened it. It wasn't legal documents this time. It was a video file. The video showed Sienna. But she wasn't with Marcus. She was in a nightclub in Miami, date stamped 3 weeks ago, while she was supposed to be visiting her sick grandmother. She was in a VIP booth, snorting a line of white powder off the table and kissing. Marcus squinted at the screen. She was kissing Daniel Prescott, Marcus's lawyer. The email had a simple text body. "Loyalty is a commodity you cannot afford." Marcus stared at the screen, his world tilting on its axis. His mistress and his lawyer. The two people urging him to fight. The two people telling him he was the victim. They were playing him. They were milking him for billable hours and gifts before the ship went down. Clara hadn't sent this. Clara wouldn't stoop to tabloid tactics. This was Kincaid. This was a warning shot. And for the first time, Marcus realized he wasn't fighting a divorce case. He was fighting a war against a man who could see through walls. While Marcus was imploding in a hotel room in Manhattan, Clara Thorne was seated in the back of the Rolls-Royce Phantom, watching the city fade into the gray blur of the highway. They were driving north, deep into the Hudson Valley. The trees were bare skeletal fingers scratching at the sky. The rain had turned to a light icy mist. Clara checked her tablet. She saw the headlines. She saw the vitriol being spewed about her online. Gold digger, spy, traitor. She turned off the screen. "Does it bother you?" The driver spoke. It was the first time he had said anything other than "good morning" or "yes, ma'am." He was a large man with a scar running through his eyebrow, a former Navy SEAL named Harrow. Clara looked at him in the rear-view mirror. "Does what bother me, Harrow?" "The noise, the lies." "Lies only hurt if you respect the people telling them," Clara said softly. "I know who I am. I know what I did. The truth has a way of outliving the noise." Harrow met her eyes in the mirror and nodded, a rare mark of respect. "We're arriving." The car turned off the main road onto a private asphalt lane that wound through dense forest. After 2 miles, the trees broke, revealing a massive structure of glass, concrete, and steel perched on the edge of a cliff overlooking the Hudson River. It didn't look like a house. It looked like a Bond villain's lair or a modern art museum. This was the Eyrie, the home of Silas Kincaid. The car pulled into an underground garage filled with vehicles that were more art than transport. A vintage Jaguar E-Type, a Ducati motorcycle, and a matte black armored SUV. Clara stepped out. A woman in a sharp gray suit was waiting for her. This was Elena. No, not. Elena checked constraints. This was Sarah, Silas's chief of staff. "Mr. Kincaid is in the observatory," Sarah said efficiently. "He asked not to be disturbed, but he made an exception for you." Clara followed Sarah through the house. It was minimalist, cold, and breathtakingly beautiful. There were no family photos, no clutter, just vast open spaces and priceless modern art. It was the home of a man who lived entirely in his own head. They reached a heavy steel door. Sarah keyed in a code and the door hissed open. "He's inside," Sarah said, stepping back. Clara walked in. The room was a dome of glass. A telescope the size of a cannon dominated the center, pointing out at the gray sky. Silas Kincaid stood by the glass wall, his back to her. He wore a black turtleneck and dark trousers. He was tall, imposing with silver-streaked black hair. He didn't turn around when she entered. "Do you know why I bought the majority stake in your husband's company, Clara?" Silas asked. His voice was a rich baritone echoing slightly in the glass room. Clara stopped 10 feet away. She didn't fidget. "Because the debt-to-equity ratio was favorable, and you knew the logistics sector is poised for a rebound next quarter." Silas turned. He had a face that was handsome but severe, etched with the lines of a man who slept 4 hours a night. His eyes were dark, intelligent, and currently assessing her like a specimen under a microscope. "That is the financial reason," Silas said. "But I don't make decisions solely on math. Everyone has math. I invest in competence, and I destroy incompetence." He walked over to a small table and poured 2 glasses of water. No wine, no whiskey, just water. "Your husband," Silas continued, handing her a glass, "is a chaotic element. He is wasteful. He is arrogant without the skill to back it up. He treats his company like a piggy bank. I despise waste." He took a sip, watching her over the rim of the glass. "But you," Silas said, his voice dropping an octave, "you are efficient. The file you sent me. It wasn't just data. It was a narrative. You traced the flow of money through 4 different shell companies. You found the discrepancies in the shipping manifests that 3 external audit firms missed. You have a mind for patterns, Clara." "I was a forensic accountant before I was a trophy wife," Clara said, her voice steady. "I learned to spot the lies in the numbers." "Why did you stay?" Silas asked. The question was sharp, sudden. "You are clearly more intelligent than him. You are more capable. Why did you stay for 7 years?" Clara looked out at the river below. The water was churning gray and violent. "Because I thought I could fix him," she admitted. "I thought if I managed the chaos, if I smoothed the edges, he would become the man he pretended to be. It's the sunk cost fallacy, Mr. Kincaid. You keep investing because you've already invested so much. I didn't want to admit I made a bad trade." Silas smiled. It was a small, genuine smile. "A bad trade. Yes. Emotional bankruptcy." He set his glass down. "Marcus has launched a PR campaign against you," Silas said. "He is claiming we are lovers, that we conspired." "I saw," Clara said. "It will pass." "It will pass," Silas agreed. "But until it does, you are a target. You cannot go back to the city, not yet." "I can handle myself." "I don't doubt that, but you are my asset now," Silas said. "I have appointed you as the interim CFO of Thorne Logistics effective this morning. You are going to run the company your husband ran into the ground. You are going to fix it." Clara froze. I can't run Thorne Logistics. The board will revolt." "The board works for me," Silas said simply. "And you work for me. You found the rot, Clara. Now you have to cut it out. You will stay here at the estate. We will set up a war room. You will dismantle Marcus's legacy piece by piece, and you will build something better in its place." Clara looked at this man, this titan of industry who terrified Wall Street. She realized suddenly that the romance the tabloids were screaming about wasn't physical. It was intellectual. He was offering her something Marcus never had: respect. Power. A challenge worthy of her mind. "And Marcus?" Clara asked. "Marcus is currently finding out that his lawyer is sleeping with his mistress," Silas said dryly. "I sent him a little care package 5 minutes ago. Distraction is key in warfare." Clara felt a bubble of laughter rise in her chest, a sound she hadn't made in years. "You're ruthless." "I am necessary," Silas corrected. He extended a hand. "Welcome to the team, Clara. Let's go to work." The montage of competence. The next 2 weeks were a blur of activity at the Kincaid estate. Clara didn't sleep much, but for the first time in her life, she wasn't tired. She was energized. She worked out of the library surrounded by monitors. Silas was there, sometimes guiding, sometimes just watching. They spoke in shorthand financial ratios, legal precedents, supply chain logistics. They were dismantling Marcus's empire. Set day 3. Clara identified a redundant shipping lane that was costing the company $4 million a year. She cut it. Day 7. Clara found the consultants on the payroll who were actually Marcus's college buddies. She fired them all via courier. Day 10. The stock price of Thorne Logistics, which had dipped during the scandal, began to rise. The market realized that someone competent was finally at the wheel. But Marcus wasn't dead yet. Cornered animals bite. Back in the city, Marcus had fired Prescott after a fistfight in the office and dumped Sienna, throwing her clothes off the balcony. He was alone, he was drunk, and he was desperate. He had one card left to play, a card that wasn't about money. It was about violence. He knew where Clara's mother lived, a sweet 70-year-old woman named Martha living in a retirement community in Connecticut. Marcus sat in his rented sedan outside the retirement home. He dialed a number. Not a lawyer, not a fixer, but a man he knew from the docks, a man who broke legs for debts. "I don't want her hurt," Marcus slurred into the phone, staring at the gate. "I just want her scared. I want Clara to know she can't hide in a castle while her family is out here in the open. Grab the old lady. Keep her for a few days. Tell Clara if she doesn't resign and release my assets, Mom doesn't get her heart medication." It was the lowest point of his life. It was evil, but Marcus convinced himself it was justice. He hung up the phone and watched the heavy-set man walk toward the retirement home entrance. But as Marcus watched, a black SUV screeched around the corner. 2 men in tactical gear jumped out. They didn't go for the hitman. They went for Marcus. Before he could lock the doors, the glass shattered. A gloved hand dragged him out of the car and slammed him onto the pavement. "Marcus Thorne," a voice shouted. "FBI. You are under arrest for conspiracy to commit kidnapping and interstate wire fraud." Marcus blinked, his face pressed against the wet asphalt. "FBI, how did you know?" As they cuffed him, he looked up. Parked across the street was a gray sedan. Standing next to it, holding a phone, was Harrow Silas Kincaid's driver. Harrow gave a small wave. Silas Kincaid didn't just have money. He had surveillance. He had been monitoring Marcus's burner phones since day 1. He had waited for Marcus to cross the line from white-collar criminal to violent offender. And the moment Marcus ordered the hit on the mother, he had sealed his fate. The Metropolitan Correctional Center in Lower Manhattan is not a place designed for comfort. It is a vertical fortress of concrete and steel where the lights never truly dim and the air always smells of industrial cleaner and despair. For Marcus Thorne, it was hell. He had been denied bail. The judge, a stern woman named Justice Holloway, had looked at the wiretap evidence, the recording of Marcus ordering the intimidation of an elderly woman, and deemed him a flight risk and a danger to the community. 6 months had passed since the arrest. Marcus had lost 20 pounds. His hair, once perfectly coiffed, was thinning and gray at the temples. He wore an orange jumpsuit that scratched his skin. He sat in the visitation room, separated from the world by a thick pane of plexiglass. On the other side sat his new lawyer, a court-appointed public defender named David Katz. Katz was young, overworked, and smelled of stale coffee. He was a far cry from the shark that was Daniel Prescott. "It's not looking good, Marcus," Katz said, shuffling through a stack of files that were messy and disorganized. "The district attorney is pushing for the maximum: conspiracy to commit kidnapping, wire fraud, embezzlement. And now the SEC is piling on with insider trading charges based on the audit your wife provided." "Ex-wife," Marcus snapped, his voice raspy. She's my ex-wife, and she set me up. Is the media running my statement, the one about Kincaid? They ran it. Kat sighed, rubbing his temples. But nobody cares, Marcus. You're the villain of the week. The billionaire who tried to hit his mother-in-law. It's too juicy. The public hates you. And Kincaid, he's untouchable. Marcus clenched his fists. The cuffs rattled against the metal table. Nobody is untouchable. Kincaid has skeletons. He has to. He destroyed companies in the 90s. Dig deeper, Katz. If I go down, I'm taking them with me. Katz looked at him with pity. Marcus, listen to me. Your old lawyer Prescott, he's testifying against you for immunity. Your girlfriend Sienna. She's writing a tell-all book and cooperating with the prosecution. You have no allies. The best move is to plead guilty. Take 15 years. With good behavior, you're out in 10. 10 years, Marcus whispered. I'll be 55. I'll be nothing. You're already nothing, Marcus, Kat said brutally. The sooner you accept that, the sooner you survive. While Marcus was rotting in a cage of his own making, Clara Thorne was standing in a tower of glass. She was in the CEO's office of Thorne Logistics. Her office now. The decor had changed. The dark, oppressive mahogany and leather were gone, replaced by sleek, mid-century modern furniture, cream rugs, and open space. Clara stood by the window looking out at the city. She wore a tailored navy dress that commanded respect. In 6 months she had turned the company around. She had sold off the private jets. She had liquidated the shell companies. She had instituted a profit-sharing model for the employees. The stock price was at an all-time high. But she wasn't happy. She was tired. The door opened. It was Silas. He didn't come to the office often. He preferred to stay in the shadows, letting Clara be the face of the resurrection. But today he was here. He was wearing a charcoal suit, looking as imposing and calm as ever. You're brooding, Silas said, closing the door behind him. I'm thinking, Clara corrected, turning to face him. About him. About the trial. It starts next week. Silas walked over to the sideboard and poured 2 sparkling waters. It will be a circus, but the outcome is certain. We have the evidence. Do we? Clara asked. Marcus is desperate. He sent a message through his lawyer today. He claims he has a poison pill. Information about you. Silas paused the glass halfway to his lips. He didn't flinch, but the air in the room shifted. The temperature seemed to drop. Did he say what kind of information? He claims he has proof that you manipulated the stock price of Thorne Logistics 3 years ago, that you shorted the stock right before a major recall, making millions while the company suffered. He claims he has the emails. Silas took a sip of water. He walked over to the window and stood next to her, looking down at the ant-like cars below. And do you believe him? Silas asked. He didn't look at her. Clara looked at his profile. The sharp jawline, the unreadable eyes. They had spent every day together for 6 months. They had eaten dinner together at the estate. They had debated philosophy, business, and art. There was a tension between them, a magnetic pull that neither had acted on. I know you're ruthless, Silas, Clara said quietly. I know you destroy things to build them. But I also know you value precision. Shorting a stock based on insider info is sloppy. It's beneath you. Silas turned to her then. His dark eyes bore into hers. You're right. It is beneath me. I didn't short the stock, Clara. I bought the debt. I knew Marcus would fail because I knew Marcus. I didn't need illegal tactics. I just needed patience. So he's lying. He's bluffing. He's trying to make me panic, so I'll offer him a settlement to shut him up. He thinks I have something to hide. Silas stepped closer, invading her personal space. The only thing I'm hiding, Clara, is how much I enjoy watching you work. Clara's breath hitched. It was the closest he had come to a confession. He wants to see me, Clara said, changing the subject, her heart pounding. Marcus put me on his visitation list. He wants 1 meeting before the trial starts. Don't go, Silas said immediately. It's a trap. He wants to get inside your head. I have to go, Clara said. I need to look him in the eye. I need to know that he has no power over me anymore. If I don't go, he'll think I'm afraid. Silas studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. Take Harrow, Silas said, and don't sign anything. The visitation room was cold. Clara sat on the metal stool, her hands folded calmly in her lap. She looked like a queen visiting a dungeon. When the guard brought Marcus in, Clara almost didn't recognize him. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a jittery, frantic energy. His eyes were bloodshot. He sat down, picking up the phone receiver. Clara picked up hers. Clara, Marcus breathed. You came. You look expensive. I look like myself, Marcus, she said calmly. Something you never bothered to see. Cut the philosophy. Marcus spat, his veneer cracking instantly. We don't have much time. You need to drop the charges. You need to tell the DA that you fabricated the audit, that you were confused, that it was a mistake. Clara stared at him, genuinely baffled. Why would I do that? Because if you don't, Marcus leaned in, fogging up the glass. I'm going to release the files on Kincaid. I have them, Clara. The Project Chimera files. Clara frowned. She had never heard of Project Chimera. You're bluffing, she said. Am I? Marcus grinned, a rictus of desperation. Silas didn't just buy my debt. 10 years ago, he funded a biotech startup in Palo Alto. They were doing illegal genetic testing. It went sideways. People died, Clara. Silas buried it. He scrubbed the internet, paid off the families. But I found the old server logs. I have the names of the dead. Clara felt a chill run down her spine. Silas was a mystery. Could he be capable of that? If I release this, Marcus hissed, Kincaid goes to prison for life. And you, the woman who sleeps in his house, you go down as his accomplice. You lose everything. The company, the reputation, everything. So here's the deal, Marcus continued. You recant your testimony. I get out. I take back the company, and I destroy the files. Kincaid stays safe. You stay safe. Clara looked at the man she had married. She looked at the desperation in his eyes, and suddenly the forensic accountant in her brain clicked into gear. Palo Alto, Clara said slowly. 10 years ago. Yes. Marcus nodded eagerly. The leverage is real. Silas was in Tokyo 10 years ago, Clara said. He was overseeing the acquisition of Sony's robotics division. It was in all the papers. He lived there for 2 years. Marcus blinked. He had proxies. He did it remotely. And, Clara continued, her voice gaining strength, Silas doesn't invest in biotech. He told me once. He thinks the FDA regulations make the ROI too slow. He sticks to logistics-heavy industry and banking. It's his investing philosophy. Rule number 1. Marcus was sweating now. You don't know him. He's a monster. No, Marcus. Clara stood up. He's a businessman. You're the monster, and you're a bad liar. She hung up the phone. Wait! Marcus screamed, slamming his hand against the glass. Clara, don't walk away. I can ruin you. I made you. Clara didn't look back. She walked out of the room, the sound of Marcus's screaming fading behind the heavy steel door. She walked out into the sunlight where Harrow was waiting with the car. She got in the back seat and pulled out her phone. She texted Silas. Text to Silas. He tried the Chimera bluff. You were right. He has nothing. Text from Silas. I know. Come home. The trial of the century. The trial lasted 3 weeks. It was the most televised event of the year. The prosecution was ruthless. They paraded a line of witnesses that hammered the nails into Marcus's coffin. First was Sienna. She wore a modest cardigan and cried on the stand. She testified about the offshore accounts, the cash drops, and how Marcus had bragged about hiding the money from the old ball and chain. The jury looked at Clara, sitting in the gallery, stoic and elegant, and then looked at Marcus with disgust. Then came Daniel Prescott. The lawyer had cut a deal. He gave up everything. He walked the jury through the complex web of shell companies Marcus had used to defraud the shareholders. He explained the Bluebird LLC account. He admitted to helping Marcus launder money. But the final nail was Clara. She didn't testify with tears. She testified with data. She stood before the court, a projector screen behind her. She was the expert witness of her own life. Exhibit C, Clara said, using a laser pointer to highlight a row of numbers. This transfer of $2 million was labeled consulting fees. However, the recipient bank account belongs to a holding company registered to Mr. Thorne's personal gambling debts in Macau. I traced the routing number through the SWIFT system. She was brilliant. She was clinical. She dismantled every lie Marcus had ever told. Marcus watched her from the defense table, his face pale. He realized then that he hadn't just married a pretty face. He had married a supercomputer, and he had been too stupid to plug her in. The verdict. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. When they returned, the courtroom was silent. Marcus stood up, his legs shaking. "We, the jury," the foreman read, "find the defendant Marcus Thorne guilty on all counts." The courtroom erupted. The gavel banged. Marcus slumped into his chair, burying his face in his hands. Justice Holloway didn't waste time. "Mr. Thorne, you have shown zero remorse. You preyed on your investors, you betrayed your family, and you attempted to commit violence against a vulnerable senior citizen. I am sentencing you to 25 years in a federal penitentiary without the possibility of parole for at least 20. 25 years. As the marshals dragged Marcus away, he looked back one last time. He looked for Clara. But she wasn't looking at him. She was already walking toward the exit, her head held high, flanked by Silas Kincaid. The aftermath. That evening the Kincaid estate was quiet. The storm was over. Clara sat on the terrace, a glass of vintage wine in her hand. The Hudson River reflected the moonlight below. She felt light, the weight she had been carrying for 7 years, the weight of being the perfect wife, the weight of the secrets, the weight of the fear was gone. Silas walked out onto the terrace. He had loosened his tie. He looked relaxed, something she had rarely seen. "It's done?" Silas said, leaning against the stone railing. "It's done," Clara agreed. "The board officially voted me in as permanent CEO this afternoon. Marcus's shares have been seized and will be auctioned. We're going to buy them back." "Good," Silas said. "You earned it." He turned to face her. The air was thick with the unspoken thing between them. "So," Silas said softly, "the war is over. Usually mercenaries go home after the war." Clara looked up at him. "Is that what I am? A mercenary? You tell me." Silas moved closer. He reached out and took the wineglass from her hand, setting it on the table. He took her hand instead. His skin was warm. "You have your company. You have your reputation back. You have your freedom. You don't need my protection anymore, Clara. You don't need to stay in this house." Clara stood up. She was inches from him. She could smell the sandalwood and rain on his jacket. "I didn't stay for the protection, Silas," she whispered. "Why did you stay?" "Because," Clara said, her voice trembling slightly, "I found someone who speaks my language. I found someone who sees the math." Silas's eyes softened. He reached up and brushed a strand of hair from her face. His touch was electric. "The math says we make a good team," Silas murmured. "The math says—" Clara smiled, leaning into his touch, "that the probability of me leaving is 0. Silas didn't smile. He simply leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't a desperate kiss, like the ones Marcus used to give when he wanted something. It was a firm, possessive, devastating kiss. It was a merger of equals. It was the sealing of a contract that had nothing to do with business. As they pulled apart, breathless, Silas rested his forehead against hers. "Tomorrow," he said, "we have a board meeting." Clara laughed, a low, throaty sound. "We do." "But tonight," Silas said, pulling her toward the glass doors, "I'm taking the phone off the hook." 5 years later. The air in Davos, Switzerland smelled of ice and old money. Inside the main Congress Hall of the World Economic Forum, the chatter of 3,000 world leaders died down as a single spotlight hit the stage. "Please welcome," the announcer boomed, "the CEO of Kincaid Thorne Global, Clara Kincaid." Clara walked out. She wasn't the woman in the cream coat anymore. She wore a bespoke black suit that looked like armor. She stood at the podium looking out at the most powerful people on earth and spoke. "We live in an economy of noise," Clara said, her voice calm but amplified. "We are told to scream to be heard, but the most expensive thing in the world is silence. Silence is where you plan. Silence is where you win." Backstage, Silas Kincaid watched her. He wasn't the recluse in the tower anymore. He was the partner of the most dangerous woman in the world. He checked his phone. Their acquisition of the European maritime routes was complete. While she charmed the world, he rewrote the map. A perfect machine. The view from Cell Block D. 4,000 miles away in the Federal Correctional Institution in Otisville, the air smelled of bleach. Marcus Thorne sat in the common room wearing a faded khaki uniform 2 sizes too big. He held a lukewarm coffee staring at the television mounted inside a wire cage. It was broadcasting the Davos summit. He watched Clara. She looked radiant. She looked unstoppable. "She's hot," a younger inmate grunted next to him. "Who is she?" Marcus crushed the plastic cup in his hand. "I used to know her." "Yeah, right." The inmate laughed, walking away. "Dream on, old man." Marcus sat alone. The camera panned to the audience and caught Silas Kincaid looking at Clara with absolute devotion, a look Marcus had never given her. In that moment, the crushing weight of truth hit him. He hadn't just lost his money. He could have made money back. He had lost her. He had held a diamond and traded it for a handful of glitter. Now the diamond was cutting the glass ceiling of the world, and he was just the man who used to own the box it came in. The final merger. That night on the balcony of a private chalet overlooking the snowy Alps, Clara and Silas stood in the cold, crisp air. "Did you see the news?" Clara asked, leaning against the railing. "Sienna released her tell-all book today. She blames Marcus for everything." "Let them feed on the scraps," Silas said, wrapping his arms around her waist. "We have an empire to run." "Actually," Clara turned in his arms, pulling a small velvet box from her pocket. "There is one more acquisition pending." Silas, the man who never blinked, looked surprised. "You beat me to it." "I usually do." Clara smiled. She opened the box. It wasn't a diamond. It was a band of platinum inlaid with meteorite iron. Rare, unbreakable. "I checked your search history, Silas. You were being indecisive about the ring, so I took the initiative." "Silas Kincaid," she whispered. "We are partners in business and partners in crime. It's time we merge the assets completely." Silas laughed, a genuine sound that echoed off the mountains. He slid the ring onto his finger. It fit perfectly. "I had a speech prepared," Silas admitted, pulling her close. "It had data points." "I prefer the executive summary," Clara said, pulling him down for a kiss. Under the Swiss stars, the merger was sealed. Clara had signed away a fortune to leave a marriage, but she had walked away with her self-worth. And as a bonus, she walked away with the billionaire. That is the story of Clara Thorne, a reminder that the best revenge isn't screaming, it's succeeding. Now I have a question for you. If you were Clara sitting in that office with the prenup, would you have signed it to escape or fought for every penny? Let me know your strategy in the comments. If you enjoyed this story of justice and romance, please like this video to help the algorithm and subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive into the lives of the ultra-wealthy. Thanks for watching. Stay silent, stay smart.